Caleb is a coalition of churches, nonprofits, labor unions, civic organizations that come together around common issues in order to build power for change. I mean, that's really the short of it.
Especially in action. I think, faith without works is dead. And then equality of seeing that everyone has a seat at the table. And then also love. Without love, we won't be able to do anything, or nothing will be fruitful of what we do. And then benevolence is the kindness, just showing kindness in a mean world, I think speaks volume, as well as there are so many people that have it in their heart that they want to do something, but don't know how to do it, or where to do it, or how to get involved. And so right now, what Caleb is at the right moment is because we're just a reflection of allowing people to see that it can no longer happen on our watch. I think that the time of change is always now. There's never a period where we can wait for justice to come. We're going to have to make it come. I think that the time is right now because we have so many committed and dedicated people that have sacrificed their time to say, I want to be involved. Not just speak of what they want to do, but actually put their heart and their soul and their monies behind it. And I think that's what has helped us. When you have dedicated people, when you have committed people, when you have people that have found their passion, that's what has made the difference. We have been able to connect people that have found their passion. They have found their voice, and they are using it.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Gilliland. I'm here with Caleb's Economic Mobility Task Force, and we're pleased to be able to host a candidate conversation with mayoral candidate Andrew McLaren. Mr. McLaren, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, it's a pleasure.
All right. So I'm going to briefly go over the setup or agenda for this conversation. We're going to start out with an introduction period for you, 2 minutes, where you will be able to tell a little bit about your background, the reason for running, and any other pertinent details. Then we're going to go over a brief overview video of our Develop With Us campaign and our calls for transparency and accountability. After which we'll have a short question and answer session within our task force of 15 minutes. And then for 10 minutes, we'll be coming up with questions from participants and people that are viewing on this is being streamed on Facebook Live. And afterwards, we're going to keep these videos available on our website. So again, thank you so much. And I'm going to open it up to you and let you introduce yourself.
Well, it really is an honor to get to talk to Chattanoogan's in action for love, equality, and benevolence. And I think that sums up our campaign, because we are doing action, direct action. We're in it because we want people to have equity and have equality. And we're about peace and love and benevolence. And the Economic Mobility Task Force, I was researching it, it's outstanding. I first learned about your organization because you were helping immigrants. As a lot of people might know, undocumented immigrant children are the most susceptible to being human trafficked and being abused. And I want to protect these immigrants, and I like the fact that you guys are doing that. And I also approve of the work that you do with the bail reform fund. I want to eliminate cash bail. Nobody should be in jail simply because they're too poor to pay their bail. These are people that are innocent until proven guilty. I want to eliminate cash bail and take that money and put it into early education. So I think what sums up our campaign is that we're the every guy. I'll throw on a suit sometimes, but I'm that candidate that's going into the woods to talk to our homeless citizens who are in encampments. I'm that candidate that's walking around the most dangerous projects at night and asking people who needs baby formula, how can we get you a job with a livable wage? And we know that right now there is a war on the poor. And our campaign and our administration is going to recruit everybody possible to end the war on the poor and declare and wage a war on poverty. A lot of the crime that's going on, a lot of, obviously food insecurity, hopelessness is because people are being neglected, people are being marginalized, and people are being punished for being poor. That ends when I'm elected mayor. We are going to take our city back. We're going to govern with ethics. We're going to eliminate racism, and we're going to truly love every citizen in our city. I'm going to fight for you the same way that I fought, in Africa and Iraq in the Marines, and we did humanitarian missions in Africa, and I'm doing humanitarian missions and nation building right here at home. So please join me. We need to take our city back from the greedy, from overdevelopment. And yes, I want to work with CNE. I want to work with Caleb because we need to work on developing our city more. But we're never going to be greedy about it. We're never going to be selfish about it. And let's build up a coalition of the willing, and let's love each other, and let's just do what's right. And what's right is to treat each other like our brothers and our sisters, and not like there's two different cities, which is going on right now, that there's the haves and there's the have-nots. We are all Chattanoogan's. So let's act like it. Let's be motivated. Let's be inspired, and let's change the world.
Thank you, Ms. McLaren. All right, we're going to go over with a brief overview of our campaign before we get to the questions.
This is the Caleb Coalition's Economic Mobility Task Force Candidate Forum in a series that's going to go on for the next 2 weeks. And we're going to do a very shortened presentation of our Develop With Us campaign. It's a campaign that our task force launched just a few months ago, focused on accountability and transparency in city government.
A little over a year ago, our process started with wanting to understand how to involve the community and how we as an organization to play a positive role for better economic prospects and better economic inclusion in our city. And the Develop With Us campaign is our special focus that we will be continuing into the next administration to try to ensure that the public interest is served through the economic development strategy and use of public resources.
So as we kind of dove into this, there's a lot to be said about the state of our economy. Economic growth has been great for some, but we know that the majority of Chattanoogans are still struggling to make ends meet. And so as we began to talk to our members and talk to our neighbors and do outreach in the community, some of the things that consistently kept coming up and what we were hearing was that people were feeling left out of the big decisions that impact their lives. There's a lack of clarity about how decisions are made. We see development happening in our communities, but folks are wondering and not quite sure how that development was happening, and really concerned that their voice wasn't being heard in the process of development.
Our values or what good development looks like are living wages. No one should have to work more than one full-time job to provide for themselves or their family. Community stability. Investment should increase opportunity and quality of life for low and moderate income families. Every Chattanoogan deserves secure housing in a safe and thriving community. Our third value is equitable transit. When people have access to safe, affordable public transit, they're able to get to jobs, training, and education that provide pathways to economic sustainability.
And so what do we want? We want transparency and accountability. We want transparency and a community voice in decisions involving public money that will impact our neighborhoods. And we want accountability, community-centered metrics that ensure that companies who get public resources are actually benefiting our people. And what we want, good development. Good development happens with us and not to us.
The real focus of our Develop With Us campaign is on one factor that guides economic development here locally, and that is the tax breaks and incentives deals that are given as part of our recruitment of employers.
And every year, there are companies that receive tax breaks from our city. They're receiving public incentives to build their buildings and do business. And so we had some questions. What's the real magnitude of tax breaks in terms of real dollars? How do tax breaks work? Who decides which companies receive a tax break? How do we make sure that these decisions actually improve our health, wages, financial security, and life circumstances? And most importantly, where do you and I fit into that? So just last year, the amount of corporate property taxes that were forgiven or written off by the city of Chattanooga and Hamilton County totaled over $25 million. And typically these tax agreements last between 10 and 30 years.
That tax revenue, if it were collected, would be part of funding our local infrastructure, public safety, parks, libraries, neighborhood services. And when those essential public services come under strain, or when there is a lack of tax revenue, this is part of the reason why.
Not that tax incentive deals are necessarily bad. In fact, sometimes they're very needed, but we have questions about them. So it turns out with that $25 million that was given out in tax breaks last year, over 90% of these were given through a type of tax breaks called the jobs pilot. And typically these are used to help attract new development and new companies to the city.
A pilot stands for payment in lieu of taxes. It's basically an agreement between the city and a company that provides the company with a tax break for getting here. So it's an incentivization deal to get businesses to develop here. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. They create, because we want development here, we want jobs here. But before we, start handing out jobs pilots, willy-nilly, we want to ask a few questions.
Do these tax breaks actually create real benefit for our communities? Is it worth what we would lose in property tax revenue? And would the company locate here anyway? Do they even need the incentive in the first place?
So I just want to talk a little bit about the current process for that and lay it out in a little comic. First, the city hires the Chamber of Commerce to recruit businesses to Chattanooga. From there, businesses will complete a jobs pilot application, and then the Chamber of Commerce reviews that application. So what about the public? Well, unfortunately, there are no publicly adopted criteria for jobs pilots and how those get put forward. And so there are no required public hearings and no staff report at this point. So very little public involvement. Next, the city's Industrial Development Board, also known as the IDB, conducts a final review of the pilot application. The IDB takes ownership of the land, equipment, buildings of the company, and then the company leases the assets from the IDB for a small amount. And so the big question we're asking here tonight, are these agreements benefiting our communities?
You've heard the expression, a picture is worth 1,000 words. I don't know, how much this map is worth. Basically, we won't go into the detail on it, but what it shows, anything you see in a color is tax advantage, which is to say it doesn't pay property taxes the way you and I do. So in it, we're showing pilots, we're showing tax increment financing, and we're also showing government-owned properties, which are tax exempt. And I think what this map tells us is that we've got a lot of properties in the city of Chattanooga that are colored. And so they're not saying they're not paying their fair share. There's some good reasons why some of them are not. But you can see when you take those properties out of the mix that the burden falls to the rest of us, to small businesses, to homeowners and all like that. So also given the fact that, as we said earlier, that this represents about $25 million just in tax incentives, we need to be really careful before we add more color to this map. As we've said earlier, we're not against all tax incentives, but we believe we need to be strategic. We need to make sure that any incentive, and we're talking specifically here about jobs pilots, that there is significant public benefit in terms of the number of jobs, the investment, but also the wages of these jobs. And also we need to make sure that the but-for test is met. The but-for test means without the incentive, we wouldn't be here. We feel like that some of the pilots that we've given in the past, the company likely would have located regardless. It was more the sort of the icing on the cake, and the cake was already baked. So we need to be really careful. We need to be strategic, we believe, in the future.
The process for actually arranging these pilots is extremely opaque, and it takes place between the mayor, the chamber, and the business in question, with very little opportunity even for city council people to become educated about the project that they're about to give away many years of future taxes for. So we're asking for a transparent process and a plan with a concrete cost-benefit analysis and a public forum where citizen and council input can have a little bit more time to mature and be brought forward. The second major barrier is that currently, because of the very short window for actually educating ourselves about it, there's pretty much a rubber stamp that gets put on all of these pilots once they've come out of the chamber. Even the IDB board rarely has any dissenting votes or even any questions about these pilots. And that, for both the IDB and the city council, that can be chalked up to the immense amount of political pressure that there is to get these things done once they're already presented on a silver platter by the mayor and chamber. Finally, we've been suffering from a narrow vision of our economic planning that doesn't look at long-term impacts, doesn't meet long-term goals, while still locking us into these long-term agreements. So we are hoping that elected candidates will put forward a comprehensive plan that fits these pilots into a plan to get Chattanooga's wages up to where they match the real estate market, where they match the growth in living expenses. And if we can put it into a long-term plan, then it's easier to understand why we're making this or that pilot, and the whole process becomes something that the whole city can get behind, rather than just the people whom it directly benefits.
All right, so Ms. McLaren, that is the gist of our campaign for Develop With Us with Caleb's Economic Mobility Task Force. We're going to move on to the questions. Our first question is going to be offered by Lanisha.
Hello, Mr. McLaren. This is Lanisha. I'm the co-chair for the Economic Mobility Task Force. And my question is, as we researched and talked to a variety of stakeholders about our current processes for granting tax incentives, we were surprised by the lack of information provided to both the public and key decision makers. Were there any specific items in our Develop With Us presentation that you were surprised to learn? How will you gather, assess, and incorporate public input into the city plans, policies, and development projects in your administration?
I believe in full participatory budgeting. I want to work with community activists. I want to work with organizations like Caleb, CNE. I want to work with neighborhood associations. I believe in full transparency. I'm not a fan of TIF taxes. I'm not a fan of pilots. I believe that corporations should be paying their fair share of taxes. I did not approve of the Harriet Tubman housing projects being knocked down and then Nip and Paint coming in and getting a $9.2 million property for free. And if they don't hire 150 Chattanoogans, the only penalty is they have to pay $1 million fine. Well, so what? They got a $9.2 million property for free. So I am against giving corporate welfare out. I've been reading about some of the worst deals. The Beacon Center talked about it. $6 million in lights went missing. The year before that, the Nip and Paint was one of the worst deals. So I am very grassroots, and I believe on keeping my ear to the ground and talking to the people and having full participation from leaders such as yourself, and sitting down and figuring out how we're going to get median income up. Everybody needs to have a livable wage. And it's absolutely disgusting that 40% of city employees are paid below the federal poverty line, including our firefighters who make $10 an hour. So once again, to sum this up, I believe in full transparency. I believe in full participation with community members and doing what's right. being a good mayor, it boils down to having integrity and having ethics and doing what's right for the people of Chattanooga, not just the corporations by giving them welfare. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaren. Our next question is going to be asked by Janice Gooden.
Yes, Mr. McLaren, the next question is, what sources specifically, such as individuals, groups, I'm sorry, let me get back. What sources specifically, that would include individuals, groups, do you expect to rely on during your administration for economic planning and development decision making?
It's a good question. I plan on working hand in hand with the NAACP, the Equity Alliance, the Unity Group, Caleb, and CNE, also with neighborhood associations and also gang members. We've got a big plan to reduce crime in our city by working with gangs who consider themselves power structures and help getting them jobs in construction, help giving them opportunity to clean up our neighborhoods. I've met with Kevin Muhammad. I want to work with the community haven as well. And I believe that if I'm telling you to put drugs and put the guns down, I can't tell you to do that unless I can give you a job and put something in your hand. So we definitely plan on working with the NAACP. I stood up against the Business Improvement District that Kim White spearheaded. I'm fully against the Business Improvement District. I think that it is unconstitutional. It's a shakedown of our small businesses with a double tax, and it's cruel to our homeless people by creating a private police force and kicking them out. It's an example of hyper-gentrification. And under our administration, we will never allow gentrification to take place. And we're going to fight for all of our citizens so that they can keep their businesses. And it all stems from livable wages. We need to get every citizen in Chattanooga a decent salary so that they can survive. No child deserves to be hungry in our city, and no person deserves to be living in poverty. We have a lot of opportunity in our city. We need unity. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I have a quick follow-up to this, Mr. McLaren. You're talking about meeting and communicating with a lot of different community groups. How do you see that communication process or planning process actually happening? Are we talking about broad-scale public forums that happen to inform? Or are we talking about individual sit-downs to develop a plan? What does that look like a little bit more in depth?
Sure. Well, I don't believe in having transactional relationships. I've been able to bring gang members together and police together. During the height of the protest, I was able to set up a meeting with Police Chief Roddy and one of the heads of the Black Lives Matter movement, Cameron Williams. I believe in setting up long-term relationships with people, like I said, that are not transactional. So a lot of times for me, it's face-to-face and we talk, and I might bring people together. Obviously in the pandemic, it's a little bit harder to do face-to-face, but we need to have consistent relationships, not just, meet with each other when tempers reach a boiling point. We need to already establish these relationships. And I've got a lot of energy, and this is something that I'm used to doing in Africa, in the Bahamas, when they had the hurricane that devastated the country. I was down there helping them rebuild. I was helping Puerto Ricans rebuild after the earthquakes that happened last year. And I've done this all over the world in the Middle East as well. So it boils down to one-on-one communication, yes, but also having a roundtable, a coalition of the willing, of do-gooders, of people in our city who want to have positive change. And we need to have consistent meetings as often as possible. I would say every week, and to communicate via social media, on the phone. It comes down to having really, really good interpersonal communication skills. And that's something that I've been very good at throughout my career in protecting people, doing private investigations, and doing what I'm doing right now with you. Sometimes we get ignored. So what do? We don't sit back and wait for people that have problems to come to us. We're aggressive and we're proactive, and we go out and identify the people that need help, and we do less with more. I'm running this campaign with a $5,000 budget, and I'm neck and neck with other candidates who are spending millions. We're going to do less with more. We're going to make sure that we stop this corporate welfare, and we take this $25 million and we put it into early childhood education, and we give it to the people that need it in our city.
Thank you, Ms. McLaren. Our next question is going to be from Joe Payton.
Thank you, McLaren, for your time. I wanted to ask, in the current context, it's a very highly competitive and highly interconnected global economic environment today. We see foreign nations like China making very important investments across the board to give their citizens a competitive advantage. So I wanted to ask you, for Chattanooga, are we doing enough? Are we making sure there's enough public investment being utilized to, ensure our people are capable and competitive, both from a human standpoint, but also in infrastructure or education? I'm not sure, but maybe what are your plans in that regard? Are we doing enough to invest in this critical time?
We can definitely do more to invest. One of the things that I propose is a plastic bag tax, 10 cents for a plastic bag if you go into a store. Now, if you bring in a canvas bag that's reusable, you don't have to pay anything. But we have more pieces of plastic in the ocean right now than we do fish. And cities across the country and states across the country have implemented this plastic bag tax of 10 cents per bag. We take that money that we get. It's not only helping environmental sustainability, but we take that money and we put it into early education and helping our poor. I'm only going to accept a rookie cop salary of $34,000 a year. The remaining $128,000 of my annual salary is going to go directly and transparently to helping people. Now, you bring up China. China will have an advantage against us always because they don't believe in human rights. So they can have slave labor and do all these horrible things to people. But here's where it comes into play, why we will beat China, because this isn't sustainable. If you keep on abusing people the way China's doing with regards to human rights, eventually there's going to be some type of revolution, and this is going to get overthrown. So I understand that they've got certain advantages, and the Soviet Union does too, because they've got a dictator and they can force mass production, and don't have to worry about unions and don't have to worry about treating people with ethics. But that's not what the United States is about. That's not why people look to the United States as the beacon on the hill, as Ronald Reagan talked about. We have integrity in our country. We have ethics. This is a place where anybody can come. And I'm so inspired by the poem that's written on the Statue of Liberty. That's about the American dream. And we believe in the American dream. And I think that by treating people with dignity, and yes, we have to improve our education. And I want to hammer the county when necessary to make sure that our students in our city are taken care of and given an equal education. But to answer your question, to sum it up, no, we're not doing enough. We do need more money. And where we're going to get that money from is the plastic bag tax and also ending corporate welfare. And if I have to raise taxes on people, then I will. I'll try not to do it. I'll try to do it at a very small level, but we need to make sure that we're taking care of our city employees. The fact that 40% of our city employees are living below the federal poverty line is an outrage.
Great, sir. Well, thank you. In honor, do you have any estimate how much your proposal would raise, or with the bag?
With the 10-cent plastic bag tax? You can look at cities across the country like Seattle, Washington. I don't want to gamble on that. I know it would be several $1 million. I know, in my opinion, it would be at least $5 million. However, I don't know how many people will actually go to the canvas bags. We're actually hoping that it will be a rather small amount, because I'm hoping that people will go to canvas bags and we'll actually start taking care of the environment instead of getting multiple plastic bags and throwing them everywhere. But we think our goal is that we can get at least $5 million from the plastic bag tax.
Okay. Thank you.
And you can Google other cities across the country and see how they've done, how much money they've brought in.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McLaren. We're going to go ahead and shift to some questions we're getting in comments from Facebook Live or here in Zoom. The first one is, what is your understanding of the grassroots community-led community benefits agreement in regard to the Nippon Paint Company, and how would you assure a clear path for community-led movements to succeed in community-initiated negotiations with companies moving into their neighborhoods?
My goal is, I don't dislike Nippon Paint. I don't approve of the fact that Mayor Burke said that this was going to benefit people, and lots of people were going to get jobs. Over 300 families lost their homes when they tore down the Harriet Tubman housing projects. And then, like I said, it's a $9.2 million property that they got for free. And if they don't, I've seen two different figures, by the way. I've seen 150 Chattanoogan's have to be hired, and then I've seen 130 Chattanoogan's have to be hired. And if they're not hired, if 150 Chattanoogan's are not hired, then all they have to do is pay a $1 million fine. So guess what? That means that the city of Chattanooga loses $8.2 million. I also want to know, out of these 150 Chattanoogans, are they going to be from District 8? Are they going to be from the neighborhood? Or are they going to be hired from, District 1, District 2? This is not what was promised to the community. And I stood up, against this. And I was talking to city council members the day before they were doing this. We need to fight. We need to stand up. I'll work with Nip and Paint, and I'll try to get them to hire a lot of people from the community. But this also boils down to trade schools. We need trade schools because right now Volkswagen's getting a federal contract to where they're going to be switching over to electric cars. And where are they going to be hiring people from? It's probably going to be, Cleveland and other places where there's more opportunity to go to trade schools. We need to get people livable wages. We need to get them marketable skills. And this is an opportunity that people could be working in a Nip and Paint factory. But so in essence, I would love to be able to rip up this deal. I'm going to do everything I can to stop this deal. I don't believe in it. It's not what the community was promised. This is not grassroots at all. I think that this made the state pork report last year for a valid reason, because it is just a horrendous deal. And I think it's one of the stains of Mayor Burke's legacy. This was just an epic failure. And I would never do business like this. I would never not, ignore the neighborhood, lie to the neighborhood and say that we're going to be doing something great that's going to stimulate the local economy. This does not stimulate the local economy. What it does is it puts out air pollution in a residential area. And the way they zoned it was also done improperly. So to answer your question in short, I want to meet with every grassroots organization. The person that asked this question sounds like they have very in-depth knowledge of exactly what went on. And all I can say is that I don't believe in this deal, and I think that it was an absolutely horrible deal.
Thank you. Our next question is related. You've talked about your interest in supporting neighborhood investment and bringing communities and neighborhood associations to the table. The city of Chattanooga is missing a lot of tools to prevent displacement and create equitable communities from the bottom up. What is your knowledge or interest in supporting a neighborhood community development corporation, or what community development tools are we missing in our current toolbox as a city?
That's a great question. I think that we definitely need more neighborhood development, and I want to work synergistically with your organization, with Caleb. I want to work with C&E. I want to work with as many grassroots organizations in our city as possible, and not have the. I think sometimes there's a lack of communication between organizations, and there might be a little bit of over competitiveness based on ideological differences. And I'm a bridge builder, and I think that we all need to unite. And we might not, Mayor Ed Koch said, he was a former mayor of New York. He goes, if you agree with me on 7 out of 10 issues, vote for me. If you agree with me on 10 out of 10 issues, see a psychiatrist. And I think far too often in our city, people have a few disagreements, and then their organizations don't want to collaborate with each other. And we need to stop, stop bickering over the minor stuff or over some differences on issues that really don't affect everyday lives, like the local policies go on. And people are always going to debate abortion. They're always going to debate the death penalty. Let's focus on changing our lives right here in our city. How are we going to get people livable wages? How are we going to end child hunger? How are we going to make sure that single moms have daycare during a situation right now where virtual learning is going on? And then you have a single mother who's worried about where is she going to get responsible and affordable daycare for her kids so that she can go to school. It's the government's job to help people, not harm. I want to clean up poor people's houses if they're too poor to be able to fix their house. I don't want to be hitting them with further code infractions. I don't want to be fining people that are poor. I don't want to be demolishing people's homes. And other candidates have talked about doing this, about demolishing poor people's homes because it lowers the neighborhood value. One of my opponents, Kim White, spearheaded the Business Improvement District because it's all about property values. it's not about property values with me. Yes, I want people's property values to go up, but I'm against gentrification. What I'm for is helping people thrive. And I'm creating a small business task force on how we're going to help small businesses unionize, team up, strategize so that we can all thrive in our city.
Thank you. So I've got another question here. The 2019 disparity report revealed that statistically significant disparities were identified between the proportion of City of Chattanooga procurement contracts that were allocated to white male-owned and operated entities as opposed to minority or women-owned business entities. Minority business entities in particular were grossly denied. How will the candidate act to address the critical weakness in the city's procurement and contractor development programs, which involves its relationship with the broader networks and activities of the business community?
Right. Well, one of my strengths, I would say, is recognizing my weaknesses. And I know that I'm not an expert on every single subject in our city. But what I was able to do when I was planning routes for the State Department in Iraq, we were getting attacked on average 60 times a day. And I would have all different personalities, former SEALs, former Delta Force, FBI, CIA. And I was our intel analyst and would have to go out on these runs. And I would have to plan, a primary, a secondary, a tertiary route. What I'm good at is identifying talent. And I can see, okay, he is really, really good on environmental issues. She is really, really good on economic issues. So what I would do is sit down. And also I believe in if we have to assemble a team of our rivals, like Abraham Lincoln did, the book Doris Kearns Goodwin wrote, Team of Rivals, The Political Genius of Lincoln, is bringing in people that I might have some ideological differences with, but I recognize that they're a genius and that they're talented. So there's some people in your organization that, granted, their inherent knowledge of doing this for years and years and years is a little bit more in depth than mine is. So what I would do is meet with the best and the brightest on each specific topic that we're talking about and identify solutions and then come up with a plan together, incorporating everybody. Everybody gets an equal spot at the table and saying, okay, this is what makes sense. I'm a big common sense guy. I don't pretend to be a genius. What I have is ethics, integrity, and common sense. And I've got the humility to seek to understand before I'm understood. So I believe in bringing in people that you recommend on how we're going to do this, people that C&E recommends, and then me doing due diligence and doing my own research and developing a solution with as much participation of the various communities of all 9 districts in our city. And that might be completely different in District 1 than from what the specific needs of District 9 needs. So I would say, to answer your question, it comes down to participation and developing a plan. A lot of times the plans are fluid. I was trying to develop a budget and then COVID hit. And then obviously all our ideas about what we were going to be doing with the annual budget went out the window.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, we've got one last question here. How well do you know our city's neighborhoods and in what ways?
Well, I went to the Citizens Police Academy this year and I graduated and I went on a ride along. And I went on the ride along around Avondale in District 8. And I've basically wanted to identify the most marginalized communities because I think those are the ones that we need to help first and we need to prioritize. I live in District 1. I live in Mountain Creek Road. And I have noticed that there's a lot of overdevelopment here. They're building 4-story condos right on the road, but there's no more new gas stations and lines are developing. Traffic is increasing and people's quality of life is decreasing. Today, I drove around to various homeless encampments in the city of Chattanooga because I want to talk to homeless people. And I got into an argument with a local developer and it started to get heated and I calmed him down. And I said, look, I understand that you're frustrated about the trash piling up, but we need to work together. There's ways to help them and get them housing and get the rehabilitation that they needed. And there's the ways to help you. I understand that you're frustrated with the trash cleaning up, but I've gone to a lot of our housing projects, the Woodlawns, now known as Bayberry, and we did food drives, we did toy drives, we've done gang intervention across the city, and we've gotten people jobs that pay livable wages. So I'm very vocal and not afraid to talk about who I endorse for city council races. I've talked about which representatives that I think will be the best to be in the city council, and I talk about that. I go on the record, whereas other mayoral candidates don't want to talk about who they think will be the best city council. I know as mayor, I can't do this alone. I need the support of the city council. And I'm often in communication with city council candidates and city council members on how we're going to go forward together and work together. Because I think it does come down to having a a likable personality that can be diplomatic. The mayor's not supposed to be the dictator. The mayor is supposed to work with the constituents and also work with the members of the city council that controls the purse strings of the city. So to say how well I know the city, I think I know the city fairly well, but I'm humble enough to say that there's always things that I must learn, that I need to learn, and that I will learn. And I believe in being fully accessible. So please reach out to me 24/7 and hold me accountable if I'm doing something wrong, and help me grow and help me be a better leader and be a better public servant. Because I believe that being a mayor, a good mayor, means that you must be humble, and it means that you must be truly called to serve the people of the city, not, try to dictate to them. So thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, so part of this campaign with Develop With Us is to look for clear commitments to the ask that we've developed. All right, so what we're looking for, I've got a series of 4 asks that have already been shared with candidates. And what we're looking for is a yes or no about whether you agree on these asks. So I'm going to read these one-on-one and just to get your commitment to them. Our first ask is, will you commit to develop and implement clear, enforceable, publicly accessible criteria for jobs pilots?
Yes.
Thank you. Ask 2, will you help ensure that City Council, relevant boards, and the general public have thorough written information outlining exactly how a proposed tax break will benefit the public? And will you ensure that this information is provided well ahead of any vote on a pilot, TIF, or other form of public incentive?
Yes.
Thank you. Ask 3, will you support an effort to require relevant boards and City Council, such as the Industrial Development Board and the HEB Board, to hold public hearings for respective pilot proposals?
Yes.
And lastly, will you work with Caleb to help identify and set clear expectations for appointees to the IDB and the HEB Board?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Mr. McLaren, we appreciate so much your time and your willingness to come and talk with us and share in this development of the campaign. We wanted to provide a time for closing, 2 minutes, however you would want to address the public.
I just want to thank your organization. You do so much good work. You have so many brilliant minds there. It really does inspire me. And it's great to just to read over everything that you guys are doing and listen to your videos. And there's a quote by Margaret Mead that I love, and it says, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever does." And that's what Caleb represents to me. It's just a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens that are out there doing the hard work. And doing the hard work isn't always rewarded. It isn't always popular. But that's what this is about. It's about doing what's right for people, truly believing in selfless service, helping people. This is what our campaign is all about. We, win or lose, we're trying to change the narrative so that we can shine a light on our most vulnerable citizens and get people to realize and understand that we need to help people, that the income in our city is not fair. People are suffering out there needlessly. There's kids that are hungry. There are people that are homeless, a lot of people that are homeless. There's a lot of people that are wondering, why doesn't anybody care? And your organization is telling the people that you guys care. Our campaign is telling people that we care and we can do more. We just have to try harder. We have to believe in ourselves. We have to team up with each other. But there's a momentum, there's a movement in our city that enough is enough. And we're not going to take anymore from the status quo when they try to do us dirty and give away money to corporations who don't need it in the first place. This is a great, I feel, cathartic moment in our city, in our country, where people are saying we can do better and we're going to do better. And we're not going to make excuses. We're going to go out and we're going to get into it and we're going to achieve the American dream. So thank you so much. And I thank everybody for asking questions, and reach out to me. If I didn't answer your question, please feel free to contact me. I'm very accessible.
Thank you, Mr. McLaren. We appreciate your time. For those tuning in, thank you for joining us for this series of forums. Our next forum is going to be tomorrow night at 7 with mayoral candidate Wade Hinton. We'll also be coordinating City Council candidate forum starting on Sunday through Wednesday. So please check out and be involved in those conversations as well. For more information about our Develop With Us campaign, you can easily find it on our website at www.calebcha.org/developwithus. We hope that you'll join us as we continue forward. Thank you all so much and have a great day.